if we can, I'd like to raise the issue of what we call Klaus's walls, because the ones that actually were... Look, a lot of these sites that Klaus gives us to are the most appallingly difficult, sometimes incredibly dangerous sites to get to, and it's not a place people are going to come onto.
Uh-huh.
And often we're very obtuse with about the actual location, and I'm going to be in this case too. I'm sorry, but it's too precious to have fools and idiots wandering upon it, and also those without original sensibilities and understandings, because the first people own these sites. Now, this particular site is, I rated in the top 3 most dangerous sites I've been to, and every time I go there I dread jumping across one bit, because if it's so steep, if you miss your foot as you jump across about a 2-metre spread, you've got to jump onto another foot and then spring up the hill, and if you don't, you go back down, you're going to roll 100 metres and it's going to hurt.
Wow.
But when you get there, you get inside something that's dangerous to even stand on, and when you get inside, it's perfectly flat. That's the first thing we noticed when we got inside this thing, and it's made of 3 walls. Now, we put pictures up on an article, which I think you guys actually noticed, didn't you? And that's
yes, sir.
How you got to
Yep.
us. And that particular article was about, I think it was called something like, it's a bit banal and trite, but that's what I do with the headings, another block in the wall. Now, you write about the cut and the join being like the ones in South America, so much so that I was taking the leaflets of paper and I could slide them just in maybe 15 centimetres, and it was a perfect join all the way along.
Wow.
What really sort of surprised us was the synchronicity of the walls, and if I can give some examples, there are 3 sets of walls that have all got 4 layers. Now, the base wall, and each one is either 190, 190 or 189 centimetres tall. Now, that seems an amazing coincidence if it's just by pure chance.
That's pretty precise work.
Well, it gets worse. The front 2 walls, the upper 2 walls, their height is 293 or 292 centimetres, and both have one has 4 layers and one has 3 layers, and most of those rocks are rectangular, time after time. Now, the cut on the second wall, which is the middle wall, if it's 190 on one side, I can go around the other side and it'll be exactly the same measurements on both sides.
Uh-huh.
That is an amazingly straight cut on a slope that is running at 45, 50 degrees. So you would see that the actual way the pressure is not pushing vertically out at 180, it's pushing in a different way, and all fractures should not be going straight. They should be running the same way the pressure is. So we're finding all these straight rocks, but what we also find amazing is those 3 walls together. If you look above, the shelf above is 180 degrees. It's sitting on top of those 3 walls, and they are separate from the shelf above. So which means to us they've either built those walls into that shelf or perished the thought. And I can't even think about this one, but the walls were put there first and then the thing was put on top, because the shelf on top weighs 150 tons.
Jeez.
So that's the beginning of a structure, and look, the whole thing weighs hundreds of tons anyway, that we were taken to solely by the markers that Klaus gave us, and no one's going to find it. You could walk within 2 metres of this, and all you'd be worried about is whether you're going to die. You're not going to be looking at it. If you look down, you can't see the entrance. It is so difficult to find. Doesn't that sound like what they used to do with the Valley of the Kings?
This sounds very reminiscent to me of the stones at Baalbek in Lebanon.
Well, you know, the problem is that we know it leads somewhere, and I got about 15 metres down one tunnel, but because of the fact there's been earthquakes there, and sandstone doesn't go well with earthquakes in Newcastle, the whole shelf is falling down, and I could manage to go about another 10 to 15, but I'm scrawny, but I couldn't go any further. And we know that there's more and it runs further, so what we have there, and we have it elsewhere. We've found the same walls that you see at Klaus's walls. We've found them in, so far, 4 other places. We've got another one we're putting up, at the moment that goes to the Cave of the Owls in the Ord, which is just as artificial as the one we're talking about now, and another site again. But yeah, it's ancient. It's very ancient. Klaus, ourselves, and the other people we're working with are all agrees with that.
But there's no assessment on who made them? I mean, at this stage, you've got no idea?
Well, yeah, well, I have, because you know what I do when I'm never sure about something? I know it's going to sound like, oh my God, he's harping the same point. Whenever I'm not sure, I go and ask the original people.
Uh-huh.
It's really simple here, because these people are living here when it happened. If you're going to ask anyone, go and ask the residents. Don't ask the people who've been here 200 years. They don't know. They're still guessing. So we asked them, and they're very insistent about the sequence here. Now, whether it be Jerry Bostock, who told me that there's structures around this region that are made by the Pleiadians, the people that their ancestors. Arnie Bev calls them the carriers from up there. We see them all over Carrion. We see these helmeted people. In fact, I haven't seen them there in any of the figures around there. There's a dreaming story that runs across the whole of this country, and it's called the Seven Sisters. And it's about Pleiades being chased by Orion, being the male. And as you guys probably know, Orion points up to Pleiades. They go together. And that's the one dreaming story that transcends boundaries and tribal estates. You hear it everywhere. Most other dreaming stories relate to a particular place and what took place at their event. They don't care about other people with other languages and other places in Australia. It's a bit like people in Italy keeping myths of the Germans as part of their culture. They don't. They know of it, but they don't keep it and they don't own it. So that's very important. But that story goes everywhere. And what I found is elder after elder is insistent that there is a Pleiadian involvement here. So whether the civilization we're looking at is Pleiadian, or whether it's the legacy of the Pleiadians coming to Australia, it's one or the other. And maybe from that point we get Lemuria, we get all these other things that take place. I'm not so sure, because I try to stay with what the evidence is. And the archaeology of an incredibly ancient evidence, we're finding not just in Bambara, we're finding it up where we are at the moment, up near Byron Bay, Mullumbimby. We're finding it in other places in the Blue Mountains. It's all over the coast. There is an ancient story here, and it goes way back.
I do recall a metallurgy site that was found up near the Gympie Pyramids, and this also related to the story.
I remember this raid that was there.
Yeah.
Let me share with you, Arnie Winnie Mace, who's very insistent about, the Pleiadian link and, of course, the Egyptian link. I reckon she's the expert in Australia on Egyptian knowledge and mythology and its links to Australia. She knows so much. She gave us two pieces of evidence at the very start, and I didn't want to take them, but she insisted. One was a piece of metal that had a perfectly circular metal clasp, and it looks to me like it's someone kneeling with their hands sort of raised as they're praying. And it's made of a metal that I've shown metallurgists around the country, actually, and no one can identify properly because it's not made of iron ore. It doesn't have copper, it doesn't have lead, it doesn't have zinc, it doesn't have all the traditional things that it should have, but it's incredibly light. And everyone I give it to says, oh my God, it feels like aluminium.
Wow.
The problem is where it was found at Bambara is about 900 k's, 1,000 k's and more from the closest alumina site, and you need 700 degrees to melt bauxite and turn into aluminium. But everyone says the same thing. What's it doing between two walls where there's all these ancient glyphs that have been engraved there? So there's metal all over the place, and as you know, there are amulets that are 5,000 years, and there's some stuff that Rex Gilroy's got, ancient remains too, of those dates. It's all over the place. The problem is I think there's a tipping point where you say there's so much evidence about Egyptians, I actually find it. Look, I think our count is about 60 pieces of hard evidence in archaeology and original mythology at the moment, and we sort of lost interest in it to an extent.
Because it's overwhelming.
We're fascinated by going back further and really struggling with the big question. Why did the Egyptians come here for over 4,300 years continually, risking their lives every time, to a country you can't get slaves from? They didn't get any. But there's no massive buildings and there's no monuments that have been made. What were they coming from? And we believe it was spiritual wisdom, the esoteric insights that came from way back, maybe even way back to Pleiades.
Wow, that's
what we're interested in.
That's a fascinating statement.
Well, it's where we're going because that's what the original people actually tell us to do. Our custodian, Arnie Bev, now is of the stage now where she's asking us now, the people we take on site, do they believe in the carriers from up there?
Okay.
I mean, one of her mythology, one of her dreaming stories is about the mothership crashing just in front of the waters, only 3 k's away from where the glyphs are. That's part of her story. She remembers the old people telling her that story. So, we don't have a choice in this. I didn't even, to begin with, when I came into this, I didn't even want to touch the Egyptian part of the glyphs. And from that, I got dragged way past that, and now I'm talking about Pleiades. Honestly, a year ago, our first 3 books were published by University Press of America, vetted by professors We never mentioned this sort of stuff there. They wouldn't have looked at it. They would have thrown it out and burned it.
Now the actual hieroglyphs themselves do tell a story about Nefer-Djab and Neferturu.
That's a small part of the story on the first wall. They certainly do tell that Egyptian story, yes.
Yes, I have heard that mentioned before, that story about the Egyptian bitten by a snake written in the hieroglyphs. So do these hieroglyphs have been confirmed as to what that story is?
The real issue with the hieroglyphs